Tuesday, October the 22nd, 9 p.m. in the DMV.
At 6 p.m. here in Los Angeles, I'm Jack Armstrong. Welcome to Tech Talk Live.
And I'm Samuel Jacinto. And yes, you're listening to Tech Talk Live. Welcome to the show. Chat or call in with your tech news. And as per every week, there's a lot to talk about. Things do not slow down. And if anything, they're getting a little bit more insane.
Absolutely. Lots going on. Also, this country, 2 weeks from today, we'll have an election. So lots of tension in the political space as well as all the tech news driven a lot by AI these days. So you had sent me some cool information about Anthropic. I think we should probably kick off with the Anthropic story with the computer announcement. And what that means for the development of Anthropic and this OS AI. But yeah, let's dig in. Should we start digging into Anthropic's news?
Sure. So, this was a press release today from Anthropic. Essentially, to sum it up, we're getting some upgraded models. So Claude 3.5 Sonnet and 3.5 HiU, those are going to, be updated. Supposedly, again, take this with a heavy grain of salt, significant gains in coding, which notably is an area that it already was very strong in. Essentially the HiU upgrade matching the previous Claude 3 Opus, quote unquote, at least, and obviously, take all these with a grain of salt, and maybe this is potentially its own episode, but sort of AI benchmarks and sort of how, for example, GPQA Diamond, graduate level reasoning. Like, what does that even mean? What does that entail? This supposedly, has a fairly significant upgrade. We're talking in terms of 6 to 10% across the board, depending on the benchmark. A lot of these are sort of question banks from, popular math competitions or graduate level reasoning or undergraduate level reasoning challenges. So again, this, and especially to highlight Sonnet, that's sort of the default model or the model used with Cursor AI and a lot of popular sort of GitHub Copilot coding alternatives. So it'll be interesting to really, this obviously just came out today. A lot of this stuff is like something you just have to try and see to believe. But that's kind of the boring news. Perhaps the more interesting part of this is the PC, I forget what it's, I don't know what they're calling it specifically, but PC agent, what is this? An action execution layer that allows Sonnet to perform desktop level commands. So great, filling out forms, interacting with UI elements, and sort of controlling your computer more or less, or filling out forms, entering data, sort of interfacing with a lot of these clunky websites you may find yourself using or referencing with a model, which is a pretty crazy advancement, honestly. This is the first, at least highly publicized version of this I've seen. I know obviously there's a lot of other,
So this is really taking over like the data entry space. So I guess like if you're an assistant or a paralegal or something, like now you have the ability to be entering information, right? Like it's taking over control of computer tasks that people are already doing. So, I mean, I think we've seen other companies kind of envision something like this. Of course, we had the Rabbit demo on the show back when that came out. Obviously, quite a fail, but you know, their mind was sort of in the same space where if you allow their system to interact with the website, theoretically, you could, you know, enable your LLM or your agent or assistant or whatever, your AI could be doing tasks for you, truly, you know, which is kind of cool. It's a step ahead that we haven't really seen. And obviously, you know, we come from, you know, Siri that's pretty useless. So I think, you know, it would be pretty cool allowing models to take over, you know, button pushes, I guess you could say, for lack of a better, you know, way to say it, right?
Well, and you bring up a good point too, is obviously giving these models more control, and this has sort of been an area of research, but essentially, you know, allowing models to, you know, sort of interact with web-based forms and, you know, execute UI instructions. It does kind of open up a new sort of world of jailbreaking, or essentially forcing or breaking out of the model's natural, you know, filter or sort of, you know, kind of mitigation behavior to, you know, to essentially perform things that are a little nefarious. And it's, I mean, it's a bit hard to say what, you know, what this will mean long term. Anthropic sort of says, well, if we release this functionality gradually, we can, quote, begin to observe and learn from any potential issues that arise at this lower level, and building up safety mitigations gradually and simultaneously. I mean, what that tells me is just sort of, we're just going to fire it, see what happens, and we're going to use that to kind of figure out how to build in the safety component of it. Obviously, with great power comes great responsibility.
That seems like a risky way to do it. That to me seems like
a little bit, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're just kind of, you know, we'll just do the limited one now and observe. We can begin to observe. That's the part of the quote, I think, that at least personally gave me the most alarm. You know, especially given that it's, you know, I mean, this, for nefarious purposes, I mean, could post on social media, it could create accounts, it could interact with government websites. And supposedly Anthropic has created classifiers to sort of nudge, and this is a quote, Sonnet 3.5 or 3.5 Sonnet away from these actions perceived as high risk. So again, you know, it's a sort of like, as far as the safety component kind of goes, I mean, this is, you know, really much like the current landscape of the AI community, is just sort of, we'll fire it now and we'll kind of forget about it. It sounds like, I don't know. I don't want to speak for their AI safety team, but, you know, it's like, oh, you know, we have these nudges, we'll observe it, see what happens. It seems a little laissez-faire. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of AI. You know, I think another company that doesn't get a lot of credit in what they're doing, more, you know, in the affordability space, is Cohere. Are you familiar with Cohere.com?
I'm not. Is it Cohere?
Yeah, Cohere.com. Yeah, so they have a product, Command R, and Command R Plus, and it's interesting because I don't want to say that there are companies that have already been doing this sort of thing, but I think that there is a lot that can be done when you also like fine tune models at an enterprise level. So I guess you're really giving it, you're basically training it on company specific, like at a very high level, you're training it on company specific information. So you can kind of get, I guess maybe people have already been able to achieve this. That was kind of my first impression when I heard of the computer OS from Anthropic. And so, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is just another take on it, maybe another sort of a spin, but I feel like, Cohere doesn't get a lot of attention, but they seem like they have very competitive pricing for what a lot of the mass, the mass amount of companies need to achieve. I think not everyone's trying to use the most cutting edge, models, but I think also not a lot of tasks are very complicated. Well, excuse me, let's not forget that, right? Like there's a lot of tasks that I think we've even seen with ChatGPT 3.5 has really just, I mean, again, for basic things, it has excellent speed, excellent cost. Obviously, we're now getting into, the more reasoning aspects of it. And there's many ways, I think, to achieve that, it seems like, with Anthropic. And of course, the O1 from OpenAI. So yeah, lots of interesting developments.
Well, and that's, I guess, the double-edged sword with all this new technology. And I mean, I'm reading a little bit more into their quote-unquote research process. I mean, Anthropic also sort of provided a few kind of accessories to their brief. And supposedly how, I mean, more or less how this was researched to be safe. And a lot of it kind of at least hinges on, capturing screen data and sort of training the model on how to interact with screenshots, I guess, was sort of their first step. And then essentially, from there, we confirm by assessing computer use increases the risk of frontier. So essentially, they sort of gave themselves the rubber stamp. We confirmed this by assessing whether computer use increases the risk of frontier threats as outlined in our responsible scaling policy. So we took a look at it. We compared it to our policy. So I can open this in another tab here, essentially. But, we took a look. We compared it to our policy, and it's okay. It remains at AI safety level 2, which does not require a higher standard of safety and security measures than those we currently have in place. So,
should we be concerned? Yeah, should we be concerned?
A little bit, right? Because if you have, this is self-regulation, and it's, and you have to think about, well, what are the incentives to a company, pumping the brakes on their own cutting edge technology? I mean, there's a huge conflict of interest there. And honestly, it makes a lot of sense. They've sort of broken things out into, again, I guess they classify AI into capability thresholds. So it's like, what can it do? And then from there, they'll say, well, how should we restrict it? I mean, it's like, so again, it's like their own metric. You really do have to wonder, what does that mean when it comes to policing your own product? I mean, I think it's natural to be a little skeptical. I don't know. What?
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, according to them, these models still only need level 2 safeguards.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of Companies are willing to push the boundaries, right? Because they want their models to be the better options. They want to be, they want to have some sort of an edge over the alternative. So I think that they're probably more willing to push the boundaries, maybe where it shouldn't be pushed, And I think that you play a dangerous game with that, right? Like, because all these companies are chomping for market share, they're chomping to be recognized, right? They're really trying to garner a lot of attention. And I don't think it's a bad thing that they're trying to innovate, but I think that, you know, no one, even California, I don't know if, I think we talked about this, but
Yeah, the new safety regulation that
yeah,
I guess was vetoed
yes. So
by
they
Newsom.
think
So that was
the
kind of the last
companies.
update on that.
So yeah, look, instead of really all that's happening is instead of the companies being, having some sort of government standard, the companies are sort of just innovating and doing it themselves. So if they feel like it's important to, um, to slow down here. Now, I think it's worth noting, even in the Wall Street Journal today, Apple's software chief was talking about how their AI is delayed and, what is the future of theory and, why are others rushing to, rushing their AI to market while, Apple is taking its time. So I think it is really interesting because, Apple, of course, likes, trying to go slower than other companies and tries to get things right, where other companies are always doing things before Apple. I think it's interesting. Yeah, no company, there's no set guidelines, for how they should be doing things. So, that as we see, that leads some companies to being a little more risky than others. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like it's tricky because we live in this world where people are very impatient and where video content is a huge you know part of our lives. Our livelihood is driven by TikTok, our attention spans, and all of this stuff, and so I think that when we take a step back and we look at their different approaches, I think you know there's so many ways to incorporate AI, and I think getting to like general artificial intelligence, I feel like we've talked about it many times. It keeps coming up almost every week. I think it's really about privacy and your data because, even in the news this week, X is going to be, I think it's November 15th is the cutoff, but they're going to be training Grok on all user data, even if it's a private account. And you have to go in, and I don't actually know if there's even a way to opt out. Like, I think it's just if you use the platform, you agree to this. And I guess if you don't like it, delete your account. And I do think that there have been some public people like Jelly Roll who have like left the platform, deleted their accounts. I've heard there is some backlash, but I mean, should people be standing up and saying, no, I don't want, AI to be trained on all the conversations on the platform? That's not really cool, And yeah, our private, you know, our privacy is worth a lot. And I think these companies are just walking all over the users because they feel like there's going to be no pushback. But if everyone deleted X because of this sort of thing, then I mean, it's hard. Like I think people like what they like. I love, I mean, I think I've liked it more because I've used it for a long time. I don't think it's necessarily a great platform. Like there are better platforms. Even Threads is really nice. Mastodon is great. I believe we've mentioned in the past the Warp. Oh God, what's it called? It's
Warpcast.
like say again.
Warpcast.
Yes, Warpcast. And that's on Farcaster. That's a decentralized thing. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of there are a lot of alternatives. Blue Sky. There's a lot of alternatives, and I think it's just about getting people to truly be like enough's enough, and I guess you got to bite the bullet and say, you know what, I'm done. I delete my account, or whatever. I mean, look, personally, I don't use my X account enough to care. I do think it's a little crappy. Like if I was a heavy user, like, I mean, what are you going to do? Delete your, I mean, that's the thing. Like you've already built followers on these social networks. And so I think it leaves customers in a hard place when these companies race to improve their AIs with customer data, because it's a blatant lack of privacy. And I think that, I think that more people should be concerned about what's going on with these models being trained on all of our user data. So that's just my take.
Well, and you bring up a good point. If you're on X/Twitter, you can restrict Grok from training on your data, and you bring up you bring a few good points. The first one being a lot of using a certain platform is, we're creatures of habit, and honestly, it's hard to, once you build an online community, to simply, switch. I mean, because a lot of why you use a platform is the people on it. So there's the network effect. There's, it's, there's a certain inertia to why and yeah, I mean, I like using Twitter. I don't like that Elon runs it. It's sort of, but it's a weird dichotomy of like, well, there's also a lot of other researchers, and I mean, I'm into meteorology, so there's a lot of, it's really one of the only places where you can follow researchers and real people who have a presence. It's like, they don't want to maintain 7 different accounts either. So there's a huge aspect of that. But if you are on Twitter and you do want to continue using it, you can go to settings, privacy and safety, and it's at the very bottom, obviously, because they don't want you to see it. But Grok, allow your posts as well as your interactions, inputs, and results to be shared with Grok for training and fine-tuning. You can uncheck it. Whatever that does, who knows if they even comply with it. But
Yeah, I was
if it
just
makes
going
you
to
feel a
say,
little better,
are they even complying with this? Like seriously, it's funny to me. Yeah. Well,
but I mean,
I think to the users, look, I really think that people have just got to say enough. Look, eventually all things come and go. Nobody really uses Tumblr anymore, okay? Nobody uses oh god, what's the other one? MySpace. I mean, there's a lot that has come and gone. I think X and Twitter, have had a really long run. I do see it's kind of ironic. I mean, we broadcast on X and we have our account on there, and we have been building this Tech Talk Live community for years, and so I feel like, I don't think it is going to survive another 10 to 15 years. I think that people will be waking up to this. I mean, maybe it'll evolve into Grok, and maybe Grok will become bigger, but I really would like to say that we don't I don't know, like, is Warpcast, is that a good alternative, like, to X, if everyone just jumped over to it? To be honest, I mean, from my understanding, yeah. Um, but so is Mastodon, so is Blue Sky. So there's a lot, right? People have a lot of choices. And so I feel like, X has just had that first mover advantage, and yeah, getting away from that is really tough, really truly very tough.
well, it's kind of the adage is, the first to market beats the best. It's really
Yeah.
just the time. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, it's really just the time on the market. Um, So, and for that reason, again, like, yes, like, should people do a lot of things? Absolutely. But, you know, apathy, I think, is one of the strongest human emotions, you know, that you can possibly have. So,
Yeah.
will people do it? Probably not.
Yeah.
You know, so it's, again, I mean,
Well,
it's,
people are stubborn. This is a common thing when it gets to adopting new technologies and switching to things and wait, what is that? Or, what? And so I think things with a lot of marketing, obviously Elon has a ton of money to be throwing at X. And so they almost, are too big to fail from that perspective because these smaller platforms are not going to outcompete, you know, if they decided to run huge ad campaigns to get eyeballs in front of everybody. So I feel like, it's hard because a lot of what might be a better alternative is kind of, not really talked about as much. I mean, we see that in Web3 and in the blockchain and crypto communities. I feel like, this is another thing that kind of comes up where, it's easy to get a bad, reputation when, the industry is not FTX, right? Like, but obviously that tarnished some people's perception, of this kind of new field, right? But I feel like things are not all defined by what they might seem on the outside, right? So, um, also, by the way, speaking of Web3, the Tangem ring is finally out. That it came out this week. It is here. I was one of the first to try it. I pre-ordered this. I'm very happy with it. It's a self-custody crypto wallet. So yeah, but speaking of not putting your trust in an exchange or in a social media platform or something, you have it's a tool that it gives you your seed phrase in the form of a physical ring that you wear. So that's what authenticates with the blockchain. That's what stores the your wallet, your key to your wallet, essentially, right? So your keys, your coins, obviously is really important. So yeah, the Tangem ring, it's a black ring. It doesn't need to be charged. It has a chip inside it. It can be really, really, really hot, really, really, really cold. It can be crushed. It can be um, in a fire, it'll still work. I mean, this thing is quote unquote almost indestructible, it feels like. Extremely well made. And it comes with 2 backup key cards. So obviously you don't want to lose all 3 things. You don't want to lose the ring and your 2 cards because then you won't be able to get into your wallet. But obviously if you put your backup cards in safe places, you know where they are. You have your ring, you take care of it, you don't lose it. Obviously if you lose it, it's fine. You've got your backup cards, no problem. But yeah, no, really impressive technology that they've crammed inside a ring. And I think it's an excellent, I think it's foreshadowing the future of people kind of being able to own their digital assets, and truly have them not, I was gonna say in your pocket, but wear them on your finger or with the key card in your pocket or something. So yeah, if anyone's not familiar, Tangem, Tangem, very, very, very cool technology. Highly recommend it if you're in the market looking for a physical cold wallet for any sort of tokens that you may be acquiring from anything. Yeah, or so pretty cool.
and I mean, I'm taking a look, and honestly, I mean, this, at least, um, I'm at least curious of, can this function as a YubiKey alternative? That would be quite interesting.
That theoretically, yeah, I
As
don't
a,
see why.
NFC sort of, I mean, because I have a hardware key just for my password manager. I'm not into Web3 per se, but it's NFC enabled, so I can use it with my iPhone. But again, I can't pretend to have it on the go. It's a YubiKey with the USB-C. I mean, it's maybe the size of, I don't know, like two pennies, or it's an inch and 2 inches by an inch or something. But it's obviously not as convenient as a ring. Slash, I don't really know. It does appear to have NFC.
Yes, yeah, that's how you tap it to your phone to authenticate with your wallet. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm just curious as to is this simply a hardware wallet, or is it more so?
At the moment, yeah. Yes.
So
I see your point.
I guess it would be interesting, at least. I mean, again, if you're a huge Web3 user, I would say it's probably the most intriguing hardware wallet I've seen. I wish it just functioned really as a general security key as well. But I don't know exactly, obviously the hardware itself is relatively small. So,
yeah.
But
I feel like it would be nice in theory. I feel like that would give it. Keep in mind, the firmware can't be updated or upgraded. There's no way to hack this, right? It's literally just a chip with antenna. I don't think they want to introduce the potential for there to be, there aren't backdoors. This has been audited by other companies. This is really, 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 I want to say like the gold standard of hardware wallets. Of course, maybe there will be changes in the future, but I mean, it really is pretty simple. And I feel like even though yes, it's using NFC and it's authenticating with the chip, I feel like if it became a general purpose hardware wallet, like YubiKey replacement, hardware key, that gives it the potential to maybe have something go wrong. And then I don't know, I'm not an expert with NFC antennas, but do these things, I don't think it ever needs to be charged. I mean, I think it has like a 25-year warranty.
No,
I don't
says,
think it.
Yeah, no battery required.
Yeah.
Again, like I don't know if I guess the antenna maybe is excited enough by the NFC, to power some basic logic for the transaction. That part is very intriguing to me. Is it something that it says just the chip with an antenna. So I mean, yeah, I guess it truly is just something that the NFC excites it enough to I mean, because in some ways NFC is energy. I don't know if it. I mean, we're kind of going on to the domain of I don't know how NFC transactions work specifically. Let's figure it out. But I guess the process of that RF radio frequency communication is enough to essentially extract your key phrase.
Yes.
But I think that is something where it's like, yeah, I mean that's truly is kind of a cool. I mean, it's a cool function of it. I mean, it truly is.
It's a very unique. Yeah, it's a very unique device. I mean, it's again backing up your crypto on something like this that you can wear, that you know where it is, that you don't have to lose your seed phrase, right? There's nothing to lose other than the physical cards. As long as you don't lose all three, you're fine. You could lose two and still have one of them, you'll be fine. But I think it's a really good solution, to all of this. And I think they're really competitive. It's $160 for the ring. And it's I think a really unique solution if you have things that you're storing. And I know we mentioned helium, many times. Obviously, huge Helium fans. I think Helium Mobile is doing great things. You can store your Helium tokens on this, on a Tangem wallet. You just transfer it to your Tangem wallet address that is your ring, the ring account, right? So if you're earning mobile tokens and you have a hotspot or whatever, or you have Solana or whatever, many of the other projects, in Web3, I feel like you can transfer your tokens to something like a Tangem for better security. Obviously, not assuming that the app or that the Helium network will get hacked, but if it did, there's there's no way to hack a Tangem wallet if you had transferred your tokens to this solution, because
quote
as
unquote
long as doesn't
unhackable.
have access, well, someone needs access to the physical ring. And then if they have the physical ring, they still need your passcode and Face ID to unlock the wallet. So keep in mind, you can transfer into the wallet, like friends, whoever you want to transfer into the wallet. Anyone can transfer into the wallet address. There's no password needed. But anytime that you send any amount out of your Tangem wallet, that's why it's really nice to have the ring, because you just tap your ring to your phone to authenticate, along with Face ID. So it's high security, and as long as you've got access to the physical device or the card. I'm talking about the physical ring, excuse me. Device is not the best way to say that, but yeah, then you'll be able to send from Tangem wallet address. So pretty innovative, and I think it's a great form factor. I think it makes authenticating things very safe and secure, and it's very discreet. I don't think it screams smart ring. It just looks like a ring. So pretty neat.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll keep you up to date on all these hardware developments. I mean, obviously, not your keys, not your crypto is a favorite Web3 slogan. So you are your own bank. So keep
So
your
secure
security up.
yourself. Yeah,
Because
secure yourself.
that's your problem now.
Yep. No, totally. Also, theoretically, it's not. With tools like this, if you give people the tools before, if everyone had one of these things and then everyone adopted a crypto, currency for whatever, maybe it's like, again, maybe that's the phone plan or something, right? So I think if everyone had this, then they have a very safe and secure way to authenticate with quote unquote the bank yourself, right? With a physical device that can be protect you. So it's pretty neat, pretty innovative. So we'll obviously, as more developments come out, there are other companies doing similar things, like Ledger and Trezor. So there's other companies doing similar things. But anything cool that comes out, we will talk about it here on Tech Talk Live. Yep.
Well, and then I sort of segueing. I mean, keeping on the. Well, I guess it is slightly different. But one thing I did want to get people privy to. Llama 3.1 Nemotron from NVIDIA was released as an open source model. It is a rather hefty model, 70 billion, let's see,
Parameters.
of seven, it's more or less 140 gigabytes to download. I personally can't run it. I tried. But the really, sort of the why this is important is that it benchmarks surprisingly well, compared to at least the 3.5 Sonnet of June 2024 and the GPT-4o. But it's, essentially an open source model that rivals a lot of the, really a lot of sort of the previous generation cutting edge closed source models. So this is kind of a huge, if you do have the hardware for it, my lowly 64 gigabytes of RAM isn't enough to handle this bad boy, but not aware of the complete specifications for it or what exactly you even need to execute. But you can use it and try it online. And it's available on Hugging Face. So give it a shot, and also something pretty crazy to have open source and available to you completely free. A little bit crazy.
Yeah. So where does this stand? So you can use this in LM Studio on your Mac, right? You can plug in the Hugging Face URL and chat with it, right? That would be a good way to get.
You have to have a pretty beefy Mac. I don't know the exact specifications.
I see.
I mean, I think
To run
I
LM.
may just disable the safeguards of, because it does. I mean, it does sort of put some safeguards on what you can load, just so that you don't essentially freeze your system. I mean, this will consume all of your RAM, and could potentially, half of me just sort of wants to say, screw it. I'm loading the whole thing up, but I'm playing around with the settings right now and just trying to get it to, trying to get it to start at the expense of my laptop. But maybe I'll have to fool around with that after the podcast. But again, it's something incredible, because now it's perhaps inaccessible, but there's a lot of research going on with lower quantization, if I'm saying that right, models that don't require as many resources, yet still are able to, as Satya Nadella said, it's basically tokens per watt is going to be the next measure of performance as far as computing goes, whereas Moore's law was sort of transistors per square, essentially the density of transistors. Now it's, we're really focused on the overall efficiency of, how much can we generate in terms of, hardware per output for these models. And this is something where it may be slightly overshooting the current aspect. I mean, my MacBook's ancient with the M1, right? So, I have some old hardware, right? So maybe I need to go out and get the M4 when it comes out, which, quite honestly, could be really the first, probably the first MacBook, if you have Apple Silicon, that you should consider upgrading to. It'll be something that is actually a pretty sizable upgrade, now that it's been 4 years.
And you're talking about from an M1 or an M2. If you're a current Mac user on Apple Silicon, now the M4 would be a more significant upgrade. If you have an M3,
well, if you're a normal person, right, it's just sort of like, if you're a normal person with the M1, I think the M4 is finally at the point where it's like, okay, spending your money would provide you quite a bit of, really value for your money. I mean, the M2 really wasn't a significant step up. The M3 was kind of weird depending on the chip you bought. Some things were artificially scaled down, other things weren't. But I think the M4 could potentially be one of the first to sort of be, okay, this is a real step up. And this, depending on how invested you are in, the world of technology, like for me, it's, I'm pretty excited about these, cutting edge open source models, so that for me, it's like, well, if the M4 is available with, I mean, now you can get 96 gigabytes of RAM, I think is the maximum amount. But, if the M4 is 128 gigabytes of RAM and I'm able to load these larger models, I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, is it a lot of cash? Absolutely. But you're running, you're really running the state of the art AI model on your laptop, which is like something is just slow down and think about that for a second. When we talk about where technology was 25 years ago, I mean, this is insane. I mean, this is sort of something like compared to a Vision Pro, like, yeah, I'm going to, I don't know. I just think the capability of that is a lot more exciting to me personally. The Vision Pro is a great piece of kit, but I think we're maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit early on that. But this is sort of something where it's like, holy crap! Like, you can run and enable quite a bit of stuff already with what that sort of generation of silicon will enable, and it's something you'll truly need it for as well.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just a
Well, I think
project.
we should also mention, with the advancements of open source models and maybe the ability to run them locally in the near future on things like the M4 chips, and coming soon. I think it's, ChatGPT Plus gets a, obviously, I think a lot of people think that, oh yeah, that's cool. That's maybe quote unquote worth paying for. We should really do a deep dive and talk about when and if it's necessary to consider subscribing to a premium model that can run in the cloud. I think it's worth having that conversation because we see Grok even behind a paywall. We see ChatGPT o1 behind a paywall now. We see
100%.
3.5
Yeah.
on. I mean, can we run? I mean, I know we do these comparisons, but like it at what point does it become marketing because they convince you to pay for it when really you could be getting a very similar product on the open source
No, I mean,
market
that's
from
you bring
the
up a
wild?
great point. And that's maybe something for next week, but I can do a little bit of research and just sort of say, hey, like, I mean, I have a MacBook. Admittedly, this thing was a bit of coin a few years ago. Now you could probably get one for $1,500. M1 Max, 64 gigs of RAM. What can you realistically run locally versus what, what is available online? I mean, seriously, I mean, you bring up a great point because at a certain point, and this is why local LLMs are so exciting, is just sort of, once it reaches a point where you can have that parity in quality of output, a lot of the value of subscribing to this thing, or these things sort of goes away. So I think,
And how will they stay
that's
worth
something
it?
to consider. Yeah.
Exactly. And maintaining relevancy when these models become more of a thing, and also who's advocating for the open source models, right? I mean, I feel like it is interesting, right? Yeah, when we have these significant improvements, obviously, there's a lot that goes into training these models. I feel like, but I think for the vast majority of purposes, it would be very fascinating to see, is it really worth subscribing, or can you actually get a comparable or even superior model on the open source market, and then these other companies are sort of just kind of repackaging it in a way, you could say, right?
Yeah, I mean, because because ultimately a model is only as useful as sort of your application and what you want to do with it. Again, I mean, these are very obviously very abstract technologies, but they have very different capabilities. So it really depends on your use case and just kind of how, again, like how, and some of these things, I'm just looking at, and this is also something too I need to brush up on, is sort of the the sort of number of bits, the quantization of each model. And I don't know if I'm saying that right, so I apologize. But I think I may have found a version of Neuratron that'll fit in my system memory. So screw it. I'm going to download it and we're going to see what happens. But again, just exciting things on that front, because open source models, again, provide, it's not everything's on your computer. Everything is local to your machine. And it's something that, again, going back to the data, privacy and sanctity of it, you have a hard guarantee that this stuff, well, not a hard guarantee, nothing is, but at least more of an assurance that your data is not going to be used for, further training of an AI, given what you provided. So, especially for sensitive data and stuff like that, where you may need to have a computer that's not connected to the internet. There are certain applications where it's like, yeah, you don't want to share. Even from a privacy standpoint, right? So, a lot to think about, a lot to consider. Honestly, I think this is something where it may need to be explored a little bit further. And yeah, for me, shoot, I'm going to give this a shot and see what happens. There are a few versions of it that can fit. So we'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Absolutely. And well, so our final story for our episode tonight, we have to get back into the, I guess, global finance sort of industry that's bringing a lot of interest from Stripe. So Stripe was in the news yesterday because they are acquiring Bridge, which is a startup focusing on payments using stable coins. Obviously, crypto, which is pegged to a traditional currency. So therefore, it's a stable coin, right? It's if the dollar is the dollar and we're pegging a USDC coin to that, therefore your currency is digital. It's a cryptocurrency, but its value is, it's really a dollar, right? So, and it's always going to be that way. So I think for payments, this can really speed up global payments and make them cheaper. So obviously, yeah, blockchains can really kind of reduce that friction, and obviously more and more global payments, we now pretty much need blockchain to kind of step in and say, enough is enough with all these fees, of these traditional fees. We can actually transfer money instantly for fractions of a penny, where it used to cost a lot more than that. So very fascinating what Stripe is doing. And also European startup Celix.io is very interesting. Not as common, especially in the US, as Stripe, but yeah, really with the ability to accept payments and on ramps and off ramps with cryptocurrencies, and be able to to settle transactions a lot faster with cryptocurrency and stable coins. And for people that don't know Stripe, obviously processes tons of payments for so many businesses. So really, really important to be able to, speed up this global payments industry, and that's good for everybody because now people can be paid in other countries a lot more easily, more faster, and so it kind of enables again this global community coming together. Whether it is in the AI industry or whether it's in the finance industry or the entertainment industry or whatever, payments can now really be settled for so much less than previously. So yeah, it seems like the crypto aspect to this stuff is kind of paying off in a way.
Well, it's an interesting point you bring up, especially with the, sort of overall ability to kind of get around the global financial limitations and currency transfers, and sort of that aspect of it, which I think is, I guess, sort of parallel to the Web3 conundrum of transferring tokens and converting tokens in some way, but it seems like there's a lower sort of relevance or prevalence of fees when it comes to it. So again, if this is something that can be mitigated, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something to look into and explore. Stripe obviously thinks that it's worth it. They've kind of been making strides. I mean, PayPal last year, has introduced their own version of a stable coin. So it's like, it's something that is receiving a lot more attention from the traditional finance industry, sort of in the way of hey, let's acquire established crypto startups who have kind of proven their worth in some way, and try and implement that. So we'll have to see how the integration goes with that. And yeah, I mean, give you guys updates. I mean, I don't know how Stripe will be integrating or how they'll integrate this into the fold, but it's something where, yeah, exactly, where it's just sort of, yeah, it's something that we'll have to keep an eye on and let you guys know.
Yeah, I think just faster payments for cheaper, and I mean, hopefully that translates to lower fees and priced, for consumers at the end of the day. So, I think a lot of things. I mean, people don't really think of processing fees being built in, but yeah, a lot of companies are absorbing processing fees, and obviously companies that can pay contractors in other countries with stable coins. Can do that for faster and cheaper now. And obviously, Stripe is a huge name. So I think it's a kind of a win for the crypto industry, kind of powering, there are a lot of good uses for blockchain and, crypto tokens in the real world, so it's a more modern way of doing things. And yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll be here every week. Just a reminder, our show is brought to you by BeforeSunset.ai. Before Sunset prioritizes your to-dos, schedules, and calendar subtasks. You can create a unique work environment and maximize your productivity using AI. Don't forget, please support the show with promo code TechTalkLive to save 25%. Absolutely. BeforeSunset.ai, worth checking out. We highly recommend it.
Yeah, no, give it a shot. It automates a lot of the stuff that you would normally use to create a work environment and prioritize tasks. Certainly eliminates a lot of that logistical friction.
Yeah,
You know,
get more done. Get more done and be more successful with BeforeSunset.ai. We think you'll really like it. Yeah. So we're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, we'll be bringing your tech news next week. We'll see you here, same time, same place.
yeah, no, join us every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, and we will see you guys next week.